because I describe my job as stating the obvious in a way that any idiot can understand it.
Hello and welcome to our channel, Die Voluntaristen. You might wonder, you hear me speak in English. The reason is we have a special guest today, and I would like to welcome my partner, Peter. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Manuel. How are you?
And I'm fine. A little bit strange to talk in English. It's the first time for me to speak to our audience in English. But yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing. It's not our native language, so please forgive us.
Yeah. And we have the one and only Larken Rose here with us. It's a pleasure for us to have you here. Welcome, Larken.
Thanks for having me on.
Hi, Larken. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us here on our channel for our viewers and for the little project with what is going on now. Just for a little introduction for our new viewers who don't know Larken Rose. Larken is a living legend in the still very little but continuously growing community of voluntarists. He's an author, he is a philosopher, and he is one of the most influential ones when it comes to the philosophy of liberty. Am I right, Larken?
I don't know about the legend part, but the rest of that, sure.
Yeah, for us, it's true. You're a legend. We follow you since the beginning of Freiwillig Frei, which was 2011. And you had the most impact on our work. We translated lots of your videos into German and to make it accessible to the German public, to German people. And there's a reason for this, because it's very efficient to take something what is really well made and which is what is straight on point and right into the face and very grounded, and that's really unique about your contents you're talking about in your videos and you're writing about in your books, which are here in the background lined up. The original versions and German translations, which I did. And in the German public space, I am the voice of Larken Rose. I've done so many voiceovers of your videos on our channel, so I'm really happy to have you here. The first time, it's true. It's the first time we talk. We make an interview.
I appreciate you doing this in English since I know not a word of German, so that wouldn't go well. So
yeah. So the first step for all the people who don't know you, could you please give a little introduction about you? Who are you and what do you stand for?
Well, as you can probably guess, I grew up in the U.S. I was raised sort of conservative leaning with the constitutionalist leaning idea. In the U.S., there's this big notion that our Constitution is so awesome and it's the best in the world and it's the best it's ever been. And most of the people who think that also haven't really read it, and they don't really understand history, and they don't really understand what it said. But that's where I came from. And I liked to debate, and I like to debate politics. And when I debate, I like it when my own position makes sense. And I found that when I was debating people who wanted more government than I did, which was almost everybody already, because almost everyone wanted a bigger government than the Constitution described, I would notice afterwards that I wasn't being all the way consistent. I would say that, well, you don't have the right to tax me for a welfare state or whatever I didn't want to fund or didn't think was a good idea. But for some reason, it's okay for you to be taxed for the military that I want, or that I wanted back then, or the police, or the whatever it was. And so little by little, while arguing with people actually in the other direction, I fell off the political spectrum entirely and realized that the ideal government, in fact, the only moral government, isn't government anymore. It doesn't have authority. It doesn't have any special rights. It's just people being people. It's people doing what people have the right to do, which includes organizing, it includes cooperating, it includes a million different voluntary things. What it doesn't include is the right to rule. And that's what authority literally means. And so I accidentally came to realize I don't believe in government at all. I very much believe in humanity and organization and all that, but nothing that fits in the definition of government could be justified morally to me. And so that was 28 years ago, because
Wow.
it was 1996, and I remember that because my screen name was X Ragnar 1996 on AOL. It's a reference to a character in Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And I remember that was the year that I let go of that last little bit of, well, we need a government that just does this and this, and realizing if it's legitimate and doing good things, it's not government anymore. And it was a slow, disturbing process for me. So most of what I do now, most of what I've been doing for the last 28 years, is trying to make the concepts so simple and basic and obvious that almost anyone, if they dare to think about it, can realize the belief in government goes against their own moral code. So it isn't just I want to talk them into believing as I do. I want to talk them into believing as they do. I want them to actually be consistent with their own conscience and their own moral code, and to recognize that the belief in authority makes huge numbers of otherwise decent people support and advocate and perpetuate violent conflict and oppression. So that my own weird journey, I was sort of a nobody, but I like to debate. And along the way, I think a lot of people, it's funny because I describe my job as stating the obvious in a way that any idiot can understand it. And
Yes,
that's
and
what
you're doing very well.
it, and that's what it feels like, because these concepts, I didn't invent these concepts. I'm not the first to talk about them, but so many brilliant philosophers of the past, they didn't speak to normal people. They wrote in a higher level of understanding, a higher level of vocabulary. Meanwhile, the peasants are just completely oblivious and never even thinking about these things. And the sad truth is, it doesn't matter how much I or a few other people know. If the vast majority of people still believe in this authoritarian monstrosity, we're still doomed. It's a numbers game. So if we're not aiming the message at all the people who are proud to support and vote for and pay taxes to and obey parasitical ruling classes, if a bunch of those people don't figure it out, we can sit in a corner being right all we want until the tanks roll in. But humanity needs to grow up and grow out of the notion of government. So that was a sort of long-winded, tangential answer to your question, but there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, that's perfectly right.
I, I,
So yeah, go ahead.
you, I would like to have a follow up on your statement. When you said you started thinking that way 20 years ago, and when was the point when you started doing content or writing books or doing videos?
Well, in 1996, I have to specify what century it was. I was just in chat rooms on AOL. There wasn't much of an internet yet.
Yeah.
And it was years later when I wrote my first book, How to Be a Successful Tyrant, which I see behind Peter over there. which is out of print
Yeah.
now.
Ah.
I have to bring it back in. I have to bring out a second edition. But that was, I think that came out in 2006 when I was in a
Oh, okay.
cage. So I spent 2006 in a cage for not sending pieces of paper to the U.S. ruling class. And then I wrote some more books while in there, including The Iron Web and a story about my whole adventures with the United States extortion racket, which lies, cheats, and steals all over the place. And that was just sort of a technical issue, a legal issue. It wasn't even the philosophical thing about you have no right to demand money from me at all. Like, that's the moral issue that matters 1,000 times more than any like technical legal thing. But so I remember when that book came out, my first book, because I was in a cage at the time. So that was 2006. And then I think The Iron Web, the most important thing I've ever written is still The Most Dangerous Superstition. I started that while in prison in 2006. In fact, it was before that, but I felt like I couldn't really do justice to the topic yet, so I intentionally dragged my feet. So that didn't come out till I think 2011 or something. So
All
all
right.
from just chatting with people in AOL political chat rooms and arguing with people there, and it just sort of grew.
So
So
let's talk
you
a little bit about this novel, The Iron Web, because this was the basis for one of the most iconic videos you have, which is made by me. I've made this video. It's called in English a message to the voting cattle. In German, it's Nachricht an das Stimmvieh. The first we published the German version, and the American version was a byproduct, and it's with your voice. It's you've read a part of the Iron Web. It was Grant's speech, and I found it in an audio podcast. It was its name. It's still online. We put the link into the description. It's Government: The Fallacy of Ad Verecundium, Part 2, Gnostic Media Podcast number 137. And the introductory part was, Larken reading Grant's speech. And when I heard it, I recognized it. It was from this book. So I took, I've looked it up in the book and made a translation. And then I've put some pictures to it and a little animation and some emotional background music. And yeah, and it really skyrocketed. It was really impressive. And my question is, what was how did you perceive this video?
Well, it's funny because I still remember when you asked me about doing that, and the video that you made nicely removes anything about the plot or the lead up, or so you don't even get the context of what this guy is saying, which I like. It's just here's a message out of the blue, so it doesn't ruin anything about the book. But I remember my immediate thought is, yeah, I'm fine with you doing that, but it's really brutal. Like, it's not
yeah.
polite. It's not gentle. It's just in your face. And I usually try to be nicer. So I said, yeah, you have my blessing, but you may just offend literally everybody. And I was very pleasantly surprised by how many people watched it and admitted sort of the trauma, admitted that they knew it was talking to them and they knew it was true. And for people to come out and say that when you're just telling them your belief system is completely messed up and stupid and destructive and anti-human and all that, for anybody to dare to say, I listened and that was about me and you were right, that's just amazing. I did not expect that to happen. I expected everybody to say, oh, that's just too extreme and I want to blah, 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 blah. So I was very pleasantly surprised by how far that video has gone and how many people have reposted it. The English version and the German version, and people's response to it. Because, I mean, I'm not always gentle and polite in my own
Yeah.
message, but I thought that's pretty, I mean, that just starts with a punch in the face. So I didn't expect people to react well. But a lot of people have actually told me, and I think this would have been true of myself, some people need the punch in the face. The gentle approach is
Yeah.
easy for them to ignore, but if someone's telling them you're advocating evil, then they go into defensive mode and like, no, I can prove to you why that's not true. And then they start to think about it and go, what? Uh-oh. And so I think some people just psychologically need the direct challenge and condemnation to make them try to justify their beliefs. And then if they back up and try to do that, they find their beliefs don't add up, which is kind of what I went through myself when I was arguing with other people, and I was just arguing a different flavor of statism. The funny thing is, they weren't arguing for freedom. They were arguing for even more government. But I would notice in my own arguments my own inconsistencies and say, well, I can't pretend it's okay that they be taxed to fund what I want. That's stupid and hypocritical. I can't pretend that these people called government have rights that they don't and that I don't. Like, yeah, you have the right to protect yourself so you can hire somebody else. But that was me trying to justify my own position. And that's mostly what made me fall off the political spectrum, is trying to be consistent because you can't be consistent and still believe in the legitimacy of a ruling class.
Yeah. I want to get back to this punch in the face aspect. Um, I've made an experience in my life that when it was really necessary to give someone a hard punch in the face, a verbal punch. It was a really good friend of mine, and he had a kind of mental disorder, and it was really hard. It was almost impossible to reach him anymore. And he was, yeah, he was getting nuts, and it was a really difficult situation to to put everything back in its place again. And I had this feeling that in that moment that now it's time to punch him in the face really really hard, because if I don't do it, he will never wake up, and he's lost. And I did it, and it was the best thing I could do. Maybe yeah, this was the reason, because I didn't have any problem with yes, speaking out in that way, in a really hard, straightforward way. And I think everybody has out there has his own resonance point, his own trigger point, and some people you have to punch really hard in the face so that they wake up and listen. And there are other people, they reject this kind of approach, and so everybody has his personal emotional trigger point. And what's important is to mix the neutral information with emotion to reach the people. Because if you only bring out the information, people don't listen to you. So and that was kind of the concept of freiwillig frei, to mix every information with a minimum amount of emotion at least. And it was pretty successful. So, and we keep on doing that. So a little bit of
Yeah, to
background
me,
behind the video.
it's not just an academic thing. It's about right and wrong. It's about good
Yeah,
and evil. And I know a lot of people became voluntarists or anarchists, to use the scary word, um, by way of deciding that will work better, which it also will. But to me, that isn't even what matters in the end. I'd rather be in a society that isn't all that prosperous and isn't all that advanced, but we don't violently attack each other. We don't oppress each other. As it
yeah,
happens, it
totally.
also works way better. But it isn't, because it isn't just a matter of, oh, what's the best way to tune up your car or something. This is, how do you actually be a moral human being? and figuring out that government is absolutely incompatible with that, it's hard for it to not be emotional. And I think I actually made a course called Candles in the Dark, which helps voluntarists talk to people who aren't, because once you see it, it's easy. Like, it's important to get emotional. Like you said, it's hard to not get too emotional because you're talking about a belief that has led basically decent people to cheer for mass murder of tens of millions of people all over the world. And it's hard. And today, the warmongering is still going on. The US government is still blowing up innocent people on the other side of the world to protect our freedoms. And to just, for me to pretend it's just some academic, well, you have this preference, and I, like, yeah, my preference is not blowing up innocent children. Like, is that really a preference or just being a human being? So I know a lot of people have trouble being at all patient and not getting overly emotional, um, because there's so much at stake, because on a daily basis, huge numbers of people are suffering to one degree or another, some all the way dying, and others just financially suffering, or, being limited in what they're allowed to do and what they're allowed to say, whatever it is. And so when someone sees this and realizes how different humanity could be if we all gave up this one really stupid belief, this horribly destructive belief, it's very common for people to get very impatient. I want to go quick, tell everybody this. Me too. I've been doing it for 28 years. The quick, frantic, overly emotional way doesn't work, because the other people perceive that in a way of, oh, evangelical, somebody telling me what to think. And so a lot of what I've learned over recent 10, 15 years is about human psychology and what it takes to get somebody to look at something they've always taken for granted. They've always believed, they've always assumed. Because if you come along and say, yeah, the foundation of your whole worldview is stupid and insane, people don't like hearing that. Doesn't matter if it's true. They still don't like hearing it. And so finding ways to get people to think about it and talk about it, just to get them into the discussion, that is 99% of the challenge.
Yeah.
Because most people, when they get there, will at least have an exchange and start to look at it. But it's really hard to get most people there, because most people would just say, no, what I believe is already the right thing. So whatever you believe has to be the wrong thing. So you're a bad person for disagreeing with me. Now I'm going to go vote for whichever clown they want sitting on the throne for the next however many years. But yeah, so the balance between, obviously it has to be emotional, because this is about profound evil happening and being paid for by decent people who don't know any better, and being voted for by decent people who don't know any better. Like, that can't be zero emotion. And yet you sort of have to keep it down enough that they can hear you and they can think about it. So that's always the balancing act and the challenge.
For doing this so long, Larkin, did you ever get tired of discussion and arguments, or where comes the motivation to keep doing this for so long?
It was horribly frustrating and depressing for years. When I started, I knew zero people. Well, my first wife, Tessa, at the time, we both sort of fell off the political spectrum at the same time, because we'd talk about these things. And so we fell off the spectrum. Other than her, I didn't know anybody in real life who believed as I did. I didn't know there were people in real life, and there weren't very many. I mean, there were some. I wasn't the first person to think these things. But being in that setting and trying to spread this message and basically talking to a brick wall for years and feeling like this isn't doing any good, like, I feel compelled to do this. I have to try, even though it's not doing anything. And then on a daily, weekly basis, whatever, looking on the news, oh, this many thousand more people died because of government authoritarianism over there or over here or wherever. The anger and frustration was really real. That got way worse when a number of my fellow Americans on a jury put me in a cage for trying to keep them from being robbed. And so it's what I, of course, expected the machine and its judges and its prosecutors to lie and cheat and steal and do whatever they could to shut me up because of what I was doing, what I was talking about regarding the tax thing. But to literally have a jury, now I will not say of my peers because they were idiots. they to watch that trial and to see what happened and to not realize that I wasn't guilty, you have to be a special level of stupid. But the fact that sort of summed it up, because these were normal people. I'm sure they mean well. They're probably decent in their everyday lives. And they voted to put me in a cage because I wasn't doing what a bunch of extortionists said. And I was there face to face because I represented myself, trying to tell them the fraud that was being perpetrated on them and showing it to them in a courtroom, in a court of law. And the fact that they, so that was the most difficult thing, to not just become perpetually infuriated because of now I get to sit in a cage for a year. It wasn't a scary cage. It was minimum security, giant, stupid waste of time mostly. Although I wrote a bunch of books they don't like, but it's kind of hard to be in a cage for a year thinking about the fact that I am here, put here by the decision of people that I was trying to free. I wanted them to not be robbed. And I told them that to their faces. I didn't bring, because I very much publicized what I was doing, and I dared the federal government to prosecute me. And I told everybody, don't do this. This is not safe. One way or another, I'm going to make them show themselves for what they are. Maybe I'll be convicted. Maybe I won't. Whatever. Either way, I'm going to show them for what they are for anybody paying attention. And that even that took years and years. And then they raided me, and the whole, I can give people the whole story if they want it. That isn't the point of this thing. But it's definitely relevant to your question, because sitting in a cage being put there by people you tried to help be free is a pretty easy place to give up on humanity and just get pissed off. And I won't pretend that I wasn't about that far away from doing that. But
you turned it.
some stubborn, stupid part of me was like, I have to keep trying anyway, regardless of this happening. And now that all I have is time on my hands, I'm going to write some more books they don't like and do things like that. I can't entirely describe what it was, but it was years later where I could, the best way I know how to describe it is I can be at peace with the world being full of stupid people advocating their own enslavement. I don't like it. I'm still doing everything I can to change it. But I don't have to be like frustrated and angry or depressed or enraged on a daily basis. I can look at the human livestock and go, I want what's best for you. I want you to be free. You don't even want that for yourself. You certainly don't want it for me. But I still can't entirely explain how I got into that mindset. It was there's the prayer. I'm going to butcher it. It's something about help me to accept the things I can't change and give me the strength to change the things I can change and give me the wisdom to know the difference. Something like that. That was kind of close. And it's kind of along those lines. And now I'm perfectly like happy and at peace, despite the fact that the evil is still going on. The authoritarian insanity is still all over the place. I'm still just as against that as I always was. But basically, it's not driving me insane on a daily basis anymore with frustration.
And obviously, you're having fun. Still.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. And I know a lot of people ask me, how on earth are you like optimistic and happy given what you've been through and what you still see going on? And it used to be a massive challenge. And again, I can't even describe what just shifted. Maybe my brain just gave up on sort of the personal attachment to, I have to fix everything right now. It's like, okay, I can't. Nobody can right now. I can do what I can do, and that's what I keep doing. But that frustration, I know, quickly makes a lot of people. It makes some people just say, "I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm going to go hide in the cabin in the woods and hope the feds don't find me, or I'm going to just be loud and yell at everybody." And I sympathize with those people, but it doesn't help. And that's the thing, is for me, what matters is the future of humanity. And if I have to change my own attitude and my own behavior and my own tactics and my own approach to actually make a difference, that matters more than me sitting in a corner being angry and yelling at the world. So I
Yeah.
made myself learn more about psychology and all that. But I do have to throw this in. Sorry for the long-winded answer. When I started, other than Tessa, I knew nobody. Now I know hundreds of thousands of voluntarists. And back then,
Even Germans.
never in a million years would I have believed that I would be here today knowing that many. I would say maybe 100 people by the time I die, if I'm lucky. Now there's events happening all over the world. Now there's, thousands of people at this event openly talking about voluntarism and anarchism, and thousands of people over there and all over the world and over where you guys are. And so I'm glad I lived long enough to where it's a lot easier to be very optimistic now that I see it growing and I see it all over the place, where this just wasn't. I mean, you have Michael Malice on Joe Rogan's show, who is
Yeah.
openly an anarchist and talks about it. I never would have
No.
thought that was like the biggest show in the world, and you're having an open conversation with that about that. And so, yeah, now it's just, to me, it's just so easy and fun, even though it's just as serious and it's just as scary and it's just as destructive. But yeah, I'm so optimistic that most people I know are like, why are you that optimistic? I mean, there's still a lot of messed up stuff. Yeah, there is. But I think at this point, I can see where we are absolutely going to get to. I wish it was tomorrow, and it won't be. But humanity is going to outgrow this insanity.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
that's good to see. My take on your hard experience from then, this 1 year in the cage, is the following line: everybody in the world, everybody is either your friend or your teacher. And I think this was a really hard lesson of the power of the superstition that yeah
Yep.
the
And
yeah, it's really overwhelming. And
one funny
yeah,
thing,
the result
if I
was this book, and this is really this is one of the bibles of anarchists now.